So, something that came up for me, and I don't know exactly what I mean by it, but the thought was, is there a place for outrage on the Buddhist path or the path to enlightenment or being woke? um, Traditionally, I think when we think about Buddhism, my teacher is Tibetan, and I always assumed that Tibet was the Shangri-La, like the most peaceful place on earth. Like I thought people there levitated and they didn't have to eat, and just everything was so beautiful and peaceful. Tibet just conjured up all these mysticism and um, just like the perfect society. It wasn't until much later I read a book called Prisoners of Shangri-La that was talking about how Tibet was actually, there was a caste system, and like their political structure was religious. So if you were born as a high being in Buddhism, you would advance to the top of the food chain. If you were recognized as a certain reincarnation of a famous lama, so forth and so on. And so there was this whole caste system. And if you wasn't a part of that, then you were a peasant. Like you were basically a slave, like a sharecropper. Like they would give you enough, space to basically work for the greater good of the hierarchy, right? And it wasn't, even though the whole society was based on Buddhism, um, from the outside, they talked about loving kindness and generosity and peace and the higher teachings and all that. But to actually live in that system, um, if you wasn't born to a certain family, you weren't going to get very far. And it was, there was some brutality and things like that going on. So I don't think there's ever been a perfect society. Yeah, I could say a lot about that, but one of the other kind of awakening things that I had about Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism was that my Tibetan teacher, Lama Tuku Sori Dechin Rinpoche, would come from India like twice a year and spend time with us and stay at our house and do teachings and stuff. And at the time, I was working at a homeless facility here in San Antonio. And he said that he was going to come and he wanted to go to this homeless facility, which he had done teachings before. So that was nothing new, but he said that he wanted to perform a traditional dance called the Black Hat Dance. And I was like, okay, you want to dance? Go for it, whatever. I don't know if they'll understand it. I don't know if I'll understand it, but I'll set it up. And so we secured this huge dining room and we took out the table. I mean, it's almost big as a football field. And so we moved all the chairs and I set up the music system and everything. And then he went back there with Diane and my cousin Shane and he put on the outfit, which was like, how much do you think that outfit weighed? Like it was heavy. It was like layer after layer after layer after layer.
And it was summer.
It was summer and it was hot. Yeah. And he put on this hat and I helped him carry the hat to the car afterwards. And even the hat was like carrying this table. I was like, Jesus, so much material. So, I turned on the music and he came and he did this really kind of like Sufi almost dance, very beautiful. And the colors, like it was amazing to see so many colors on his outfit. And there was these streamers.
Spin out as he was doing this whirls.
Yeah, he would do a whirl and the streamers would follow him around, and then under the hat you really couldn't see his face. So it was really like mystical. And like, the people that were living there, the homeless population and the staff, they were just like, how long is this gonna last? There was like, this guy's dancing, big deal. And so then the music was over and he went back there just dripping in sweat, covered in sweat, like danced for a long time. And So then I just said, thank everybody for coming, thank you, and everybody kind of left. And I just thought it was a really beautiful part of his culture that he brought to San Antonio. Like, who's ever seen this black hat dance? Like, you basically have to live in Tibet to see this, And maybe they're performing it in places in India. You might get a chance, but once in a lifetime opportunity to see something like this, So whether the people appreciate it or not, I don't know, But then, we loaded up the stuff and we left and went out to eat and all that stuff. And I didn't think anything about it until like years later. I saw something advertised, like something about black hat dance on Facebook or something. And I clicked on it, and it kind of told the story of where that dance came from. And I was like, what? There's a story behind this? Like, what's going on here, And what it's about is, in Tibet, there was like a mad king, a guy that was unsteady, and he would like kill people, and he was like very brutal, and like he pulled all his friends and family in and made them rich and pushed out all these other people. And like if he said anything, he would just cut your head off, that kind of deal. Kind of like the traditional burn people and throw hot tar on people and pour melted metal down their mouth just for kicks, and that was just for breakfast, And so very brutal. And so the people became outraged. And one of the highest lamas, as far as not in the like political structure, but an actual realized being. In fact, somebody who took the teachings of Buddhism very seriously and spent a long time in meditation and practice and improving the qualities of his mind. He asked to dance before the king, and he said that he had created this dance just for the king. And so the king had this huge banquet, invited everyone, and it was this huge affair. And so this highly realized, enlightened Lama came in wearing all this clothes. Like you couldn't even hardly see him because of all the clothes, long sleeves and streamers. And he started dancing before the king. And the king had so many bodyguards and everything that no one could get close to him. But as he danced, he got closer and closer and closer. And then at one part of the dance, he had a bow and arrow inside of his costume.
It was a bow and arrow?
Mm-hmm.
And he killed the king?
No, it was a bow and arrow. To the heart. So, reading that, I was shocked, because everything that I was what I dreamed up myself about Buddhism is about love and compassion and generosity and bodhicitta and all this stuff. But there is a place for outrage. There's a place where enough is enough. There's a place where my voice needs to be heard. And so, while I don't think any Buddhist on earth would condone killing, it might be said that in order to do that is like the biggest sacrifice, because they say that the guy that did that, he acquired all that negative karma of killing someone. So now in Buddhism, you have to pay for your karma life after life after life. He possibly had gotten to a state where he had destroyed all that negative karma, and he could have become enlightened or become a Buddha or had a better rebirth, but he destroyed all of that good karma possibly by killing somebody, right? Or was that the most compassionate thing that he could do to save so many people? Who knows, right? But just the fact that they celebrate this dance, and they perform it every year, and it's a part of their culture now, that Buddhists that believe in loving kindness would celebrate a dance where somebody was killed is an interesting thought, right? So I want to put it out to you guys. Like, what are some of your thoughts about trying to become more peaceful, become more awake, more understanding, but at the same time leaving space for outrage or putting your foot down or making your voice heard? Something along those lines.
In my belief, I don't think there's no love without accountability and boundaries.
Okay.
So, like, that outrage can manifest in that, like you can't be peace and love without being firm. You know, just letting someone do whatever they want, and if it's a detriment to you or themselves, like, that's not love. You're not loving them. In my conception of what love is. So there's a space for outrage and boundaries and some type of accountability within love.
And if somebody keeps continuously stepping over those boundaries and anger arises within you, is it okay to?
I mean, I'm not a violent person.
I'm not talking about shooting them more than an arrow or nothing like that.
I mean, I always have the option to. I always have the choice to remove myself from that situation. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I was just doing with the journal. Just like, because even talking with my friends and stuff about family structures, and sometimes you have to like love someone enough to just love them apart. You just realize that this dynamic of what you think love is not what I believe love is, and it's going to be a detriment to me and my boundaries. So I'm going to remove myself in a situation before it gets to a point where it's very unhealthy.
Absolutely. Loving them from a distance, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree too. I try to be as much as loving as possible, and caring and humble to people as much as I can be. And every now and then I do tend, when I'm upset, I do tend to lash out. So I agree. I remove myself from the situation also, just so I know not to harm those others around me. That's something I'm also trying to work on as well. So, but I definitely agree. Removing yourself from the situation and putting them apart is also a situation. And a lot of people don't get that, but I try to make them, understand that I'm not letting it. I don't want to let the negative energy and anger out on you. So I agree with that.
But what about on a wider scale? Like with
Societal.
right, like so with what you're discussing, it was somebody who was in charge of these people, and obviously he's not the only mad king that's ever been around. We've seen it over and over and over again, where that power becomes tyrannical and cruel, and where you can't remove yourself. Where do you find the space to, like, is it better to find the space to, because I used to say, I've been in places in my life where I've been able to actively go and speak online or
Be a
I've
part
been
of
in places,
something.
right, where I've been able to speak about it. And then there's other times where I'm in places in my own self where I'm not capable of dealing with the outrage because it overwhelms me.
Right.
Like, I feel so angry or so
Helpless?
not helpless. Helpless isn't the right word. Hopeless. It feels like there's no hope. Like it's going to continue to go in the same direction. Whatever it is. There's several different areas where that has hit me, and that's where I don't know where. Like, is it worse for me to pull away because it affects me? I mean, that's a very new thing, right?
Yeah.
How do I find the peace and to be able to also engage in conversation about it with somebody who does not agree with what I agree with? you know,
Beautiful.
because that's where it comes from. Like, I can talk to other people about people who agree with me until I'm, you know, I mean, because you're happy, because everybody is in agreement, even if it's maybe minor disagreements, but somebody who sees in a completely different way than you do, you know, I have a hard time communicating with somebody like that, because I don't know how to, and so I've pulled away, because, you know, I am very rarely on Facebook anymore, because people that I know that my kids grew up with are people that I didn't know. You know, and so it's, I literally, I mean, I kind of stopped being on Facebook about 6 years ago, because I just couldn't do it anymore. I only go on occasionally now to see what family's up to, but I would like to know how you deal, how does a Buddhist, like, how do you stay calm and still be outraged?
Mm-hmm.
Is there, do I do a dance?
Dance it out.
Try it.
I remember Tuku saying about that dance, so I guess you weren't there for the conversation. You were probably setting
Well,
up.
he rode with y'all, and then
Yeah,
I think
so
we went in
he
a separate
told us
vehicle.
about the dance before it started, and I was kind of in shock, because I didn't realize that it was about an assassination of a king.
What was the purpose of wanting to do it?
He said it had
Then.
something to do with, the karma and helping free the causes and suffering and the homeless
Of
facility.
those people, yeah.
Yeah.
So his purpose, what he told us, I think, was his purpose was to, he was pulling that arrow back, I guess, at that. It wasn't a person, it was that he was trying to assassinate the suffering.
Mm.
And, but he said that part of the karma aspect of that was, he did, you know, he chose to acquire that by doing that. The person who did that chose to acquire that karma, but he also freed the Mad King from his bad karma and allowed him to move to a different place. So that's what the understanding for me was, he chose to give the Mad King his karma by stopping him from continuing to build that karma.
Yeah, the longer he lived, the more bad karma he was creating. That's deep, man. So Diane says, what about feeling like she was active, and then there's times that she couldn't be active, and she almost had to pull away or felt shut down because the outrage was so great. What do y'all think about that? Engaging with it and then kind of like averting your eyes at different times in your life.
If I think I can affect something, then I might be active, voice something. But if I look within myself and say, okay, this is just really my anger or my outrage is really more about me. I read somewhere, and you may have read this, or you may even know where it comes from, but it really stuck with me, is that when I find those moments I just want to lash out, say something mean or cutting or biting, I ask myself 3 questions. Does this need to be said? Does this need to be said right now? And does this need to be said by me? You know, like, what purpose is it? Am I just unleashing just to make me feel better, but it really serves no purpose? It's not going to help that person. It's really not going to help me. I might feel better for a moment, but then if you're really on this journey, in my opinion, of enlightenment, you're going to feel bad after because of what you just unleashed. So I really try. Not perfect. I don't always achieve that. That's my goal. But then if it's something bigger than that, and it's something you can't affect, I think you kind of have a duty, you know, if you can see some great harm being done, you know, to try to act in whatever large or small part. You know, I think you have a duty to speak up, but in a as gentle as you can, depending upon where your mindset is. But and then also just something that I learned from the Four Agreements, that book, that I always try to remind myself that I struggle with, is that to always, I mean, it says never take things personally, but you know, sometimes they are directed at you personally. If you take it,
there ain't nobody else in the room. I don't know who you're talking to.
If you just take it at face value, no, but what the thing is, that there's something is that oftentimes when people come at you, it's more about them
Oh,
than about
yeah.
you. But sometimes, no, it is about you. It really is. I mean, there's no way around it. If they don't like you, and you know something you did or you said irritated them, and so it is about you. You know.
But it's still not.
All.
It's still about them in some ways.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why are they reacting?
But there is some part that, like, if you did something horrendous,
Yeah.
like if you did something to injure them,
Yeah.
without, you may not know it, or you may have done it on purpose, whatever, and they come back at you.
Yeah.
It is, some of that is about you.
Right.
You know.
You have to look at your part in it.
Yeah. You just got to be honest with yourself. And what I also struggle with is, like, as I am on this journey, and with each little step becoming more enlightened, which I'm not saying I'm enlightened, I'm way, miles away or more, I find the struggle of dealing with people that don't get it,
Yes.
that don't even know about becoming enlightened.
Yes, I agree.
And like some of my best friends, when I try to talk to them about this, to try to help them, you know, not thinking that I'm all-knowing or I'm the teacher or anything, but just try to share, I have to be careful because they'll think I'm crazy. You know, they're like, what are you talking about? You know? It's like getting it, I try to tell them, it's like really getting in touch. But it's hard to explain to them, someone that has no exposure.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, they just, their
That's how
world
it
is
is
just
for
so
me, too.
different. And they're good people. They're not bad people. But I so much want to share,
Yeah.
you know, and they're just like, they push back.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's how it is in my household too. Both my parents, they don't seem to understand the journey of enlightenment, and I don't want to say they're against it, but it's like they don't even want to take the time to let me explain to them about it either. So I understand. It's also, for me, it's a little bit frustrating. That's why like I said, I shut down and keep to myself, and I'm like, I'll just worry about it, because it is difficult to explain it at the time.
But you just want to help them. You want to make them happier.
Exactly.
And find that
see
fulfillment.
things the
And
way I see things also, but yeah, it's frustrating at the time.
Can you give me some general examples of, like, in your house, do they hold on to anger, or they see the world?
My dad, personally, not really both my parents, but my dad mostly. He's a very judgmental person in my opinion. He doesn't know how to keep his comments to himself, and it's been like that my whole life, honestly. And now that I'm older, I'm trying to get him to understand that not everyone needs to hear all your little side comments. Like, it's better just to keep them to yourself. I mean, because at the end of the day, I mean, those people are who they are. You know, they're gonna do what they feel they need to do. So what's the point of even? It's like saying what you feel or how you feel. So that's personally, that's something that does bug me a lot, is him not being able to keep his comments to himself. And it's a lot of times it's directed to me personally too. Like, his comments that he tells me, like, why do you need to tell me that? Like, at the end of the day, I'm gonna do what I think suits me and pleases me and makes me feel happy. So, but he has not. It's very hard to get to him. I don't even bother with him anymore.
And to realize that it's only his opinion. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a really tricky one.
That's not even just him. It's mostly my dad's side. My mom, on the other, my parents are divorced, but my mom, she's more enlightened. We talk. meditate for a good hour, 2 hours, and we can have conversations back and forth. But I, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but I live with my dad, so it's like you feel that negative energy just surrounding you the entire time. And I tell myself that's probably a reason also why I tend to lash out also. It's just because I know, the energy's there, the negativity is there, the judgment is there.
That's, I have all these blind spots that constantly, I'm trying to see how people engage with me, because when they engage with me in a certain way, it might tell me something about myself, about some blind spot or something that I'm doing that I'm realizing that I'm not doing, but to even have that is like a leap forward compared to the way I used to be, right? Like, I thought that these thoughts in my head were real, and like things were really, my opinions were truth, and that's the world was the way I thought it was. It took years of studying Buddhism, meditating, and just being around in the world, hitting my head against a brick wall and bleeding so many times. I thought, hey, wait a minute, these are just my personal opinions. It takes a while, it might take lifetimes to get to that, And that's why I always clung to Buddhism all these years, although I love all kinds of wisdom traditions. And like I said, I still don't fully identify or label myself as a Buddhist, but there's just so much to think about, so much good nuggets of gold in those teachings, all about just waking up and being aware that most of the stuff, 99% of the suffering you're causing yourself, and 99% of the stuff you think about the world isn't really true. It's all in your head, There's a spiritual teacher, and y'all won't know who he is. He's a non-duality teacher, and I don't know if y'all know what non-duality is. It's that there are certain teachers, not in Buddhism, well, kind of, but it's kind of its own deal, where they feel like they've come to a place in their awakening where they realize that they're one with the universe, and that they don't identify with the personal ego anymore. And like, you ask them, like I've seen them on interviews where they say, hey, can you tell us a little bit of your bio? And they're like, I don't have a bio, man, because I'm not really here. I'm like, and they're like, okay, well, David, can you tell us about? Well, David is just a label that they gave me when, whatever, like there's no ego structure there or whatever, And I was apprehensive about listening to a lot of those teachers, because I realized in Buddhism they say that can be another trap. To think that you've attained something is yet another trap of the ego. It's like you're advancing, you're ultimately realizing that you aren't this body, and you aren't this whatever, and that these are all labels. All of this is true, but suddenly your label becomes, now I'm the enlightened teacher. I'm the non-duality teacher. Now people are asking me to speak and go on these shows and stuff. So you're trading one label for another label, and it's tricky. It's easy to fall into that. But this certain guy, he wrote several books called Be in Love with the Present Moment. And it was just about being here and now. And which it was all good. Like, his books are good and all this stuff. And not identifying with your thoughts and the mind chatter and everything is not really you. So it's all really great stuff. But what has happened recently is he went hiking like somewhere, I don't know, Colorado or somewhere. And then when he got back, he started having all these health issues. And he went to all these different doctors and they couldn't figure it out. And like, pain in his joints and foggy thinking and lethargic and couldn't think or write or, you know, go speak, all these, you know, physical and mental issues. And they finally found out that it was Lyme disease. And then from the Lyme disease have come all these other complications, right? So what's been interesting is he's gone from this person that I am not, you know, I'm the universe, like just be, you know, just present moment is all there is. Like there's no need to think of the past or the future and all that stuff. To now he's like doing these rants, like I'm so fucking pissed off that I have this Lyme disease. My knees are killing me. My
the truth comes out.
Yeah. And it just goes on and on. Like I saw 7 doctors this week, and those assholes don't know what's going on. And I'm taking all this medication, and it's not helping. But he's outraged. And one of the things that he said was, I thought I cleared up all my negative karma. I thought I cleared up all my past traumas or anything that could cause sickness in this body. I thought I cleared that away. But I'm dealing with this terrible disease and all this physical pain, and he's pissed. And part of his being pissed is, how could this happen to me?
Yeah.
Why me?
Yeah, why me? And he's even talked about thoughts of suicide and things like that. And so it's just really interesting to see him coming from that place to being really pissed off and outraged and really feeling his humanness, you know. And I you know, I'm not knocking him or I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that this is an interesting journey. I'm sorry that he's going through this. You know, it's terrible. You know, I've heard things about Lyme disease and all that, and it's like ridiculous because they don't know really how to treat it. You know. But from him is coming this real anger at the universe and this real outrage of how could this happen to me, you know? Do you think there's a place for that in spirituality? And have you been upset with yourself or outraged at the universe about things? And what does that feel like, or how does that factor into overall enlightenment?
Rage and outrage is definitely, I think it's a human thing. I lived in South Africa for like 6 months, and learned a lot about apartheid and stuff. And they would sing songs, and one of the songs was called Sinzanina, which was like, "What have we done? Like Black people, what have we done to deserve what we're doing right now?" It's a very somber song, and it's just like, wow, you know, like that's the valid question. And then I also went to a Jewish school from K to 12, and we learned a lot about the Holocaust and stuff. So extensively, and there was this one article that said,
I'm sorry, you went to school where?
at a Jewish school.
Oh, a Jewish
Yeah,
school.
it was a predominantly Jewish school in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
We read a lot about the Holocaust extensively, and there was on one of the camps there was like a journal entry by one of the prisoners, and they said if God is real, they would have to answer to a lot.
If God is real, what?
They would have to answer to a lot. Like, you know, given their conditions. So I think it's asking why me, and those are very human, very natural reaction to suffering that we experience. Whether it is within something that is within our control or it is out of our control. So I do think there is a space for that within spirituality, because that's how I think we form our own spiritual practices and figure out what is divine to you, what is enlightenment to you if this is happening to you, and what your conception of divine at that time is letting happen to you. So I think it's about questions.
So to work out that whatever the situation is, it must be part of a bigger plan in order to stay connected to your higher power.
Yeah.
You have to eventually
Yeah.
say, well, yeah, I don't know why this is happening to me, but this has to be part of the old bigger.
Yeah, or maybe this spiritual practice for me is not it.
Oh.
This is what's happening to me,
Mhm.
and this is what, if this is in the will of the divine that everyone else says it is, like, I don't know, I can identify with that, you know?
Mhm.
So,
It's kind of like
Identify as that, with
Yeah.
that as being your divine.
Exactly.
Okay, yes, now that makes sense.
last week, what you were talking, the example of in Tibet, how this horrible thing, how they were, China came in and kicked them out, and it was this horrible thing, but yet, it wouldn't have been for that, Buddhism wouldn't have spread. So, in the midst of all this horrific stuff going on, the silver lining came out of that. You remember telling me that?
Yeah,
last week?
the Japanese, Chinese, I'm sorry, over, took Tibet, basically, and just said, Tibet is ours now, and they killed the monks and imprisoned people and, just disrupted everything. But what we're talking about is, as bad as that was, the Dalai Lama has said, now there's Tibetans living all over the world, and these teachings are going all over the world, and in some way, it, like I was saying earlier, disrupt that structure that was there, that was imperfect too. So it was an imperfect thing, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, but there are many benefits to it happening, and I think that's overall, kind of something, whether it's true or not, you got to get to a place for your own sanity and say, I don't know why I lost my leg, but now I identify with people that are differently abled, and now I can go to support groups and I can lobby for rights for people that are differently abled, and so turn it into some kind of silver lining,
But it does feel like, we are a little older, so, we can see that the younger generation, at least in the United States, because that's the only experience that I have, and it's not all of them by any means, but I feel like the younger generation is definitely way beyond where we were at 20. Like, as far as being more compassionate, as far as being more open and accepting of others' differences, and of caring more about being accepting, it's a more important thing rather than just
They're more inclusive.
yes, exactly, because even our generation, people that I knew, the language, just the lingo has changed, and it's that gives me hope. Because I'm like, if that's happening here, then surely it's happening in other places. And I think that part of that, even though I have such an issue with some of the information that's put out online, that also is being put out online. So I think that gives me.
And hopefully that does continue, and hopefully you're right, but think of all the terrible things that had to happen for them to be more aware.
That's true. That's true.
So a lot of blood has been spilled, a lot of people imprisoned, a lot of people mistreated to get to this place where there's enough outrage to wake up, right? Let me read this really quickly. So just talking about the Buddhist teachings, it says, and this is just like with dealing with some of these thoughts and things, like I said, 90% of the suffering that I feel is coming from within. When it's coming from without, then I need to find my voice, and I need to react to it in the best way possible, but I have to try to come from a rational place so that I can fully understand what I'm vocalizing, you know. And I was going to say, you know, even me when I was younger, I thought people could just treat me however, you know. I always kind of tell the story of, like, I had friends that would mistreat me, and I didn't know how to set boundaries. We didn't even talk about setting boundaries or anything back then, right? And so I would just let it build up. This anger would build up and build up and build up. And then one day they would ask me for a stick of gum. And I would say, get your own gum, you son of a... You're always asking me for gum. And they were like, dude, okay, I'll get my own gum, you know. But they didn't realize it was coming from holding this in, holding this in, holding this in, you know. And so literally just in the last couple of years, I've learned how to vocalize it in the moment, you know. Even like during like a company meeting... if somebody said something, or maybe they made a joke, and like sometimes I'm easily offended or whatever, I'll catch them later. I'll catch them later outside in the parking lot. No, I'll say, hey, I don't know if you intentionally did this or whatever, but you know that hurt me when you said that, you know. And then it's gone. You know, they say, oh, I didn't know. I'm sorry. You know, then I don't have to hold that for years, and then yell at them when they ask me for gum later, right? So speaking of the teachings, it says you should think of yourself as someone who is sick, and the teachings are the medicine, and your spiritual friend or Buddha or Jesus or the Bible is the remedy. No, your spiritual friend is the doctor. And diligent practice, thinking on these teachings, meditating, prayer, chanting, whatever you do, is your path to recovery. So I like that, you know. Is to think of yourself as someone who is sick with the sickness of ignorance, or the sickness of hatred, or the sickness of greed, or whatever it is. You know, you're sick with that thing. And the teachings are the medicine. The Buddha, Jesus, whoever is the doctor. And your spiritual practice is the way of your recovery, your path back to sanity. So I just wanted to read that real quick. It says, we are sick from beginningless time in this immense ocean of suffering. We have wandered in samsara, and I can explain that. We have been tormented with the illness of the three poisons, which are greed, hatred, and ignorance.
What are the three?
The three poisons are greed, hatred, and ignorance, and their fruit. These cause three types of suffering. When people are seriously ill, they go to consult a doctor. They follow the doctor's advice, and they take whatever medicine they prescribe, and do all they can to overcome the disease and get well. In the same way, you should cure yourself of the diseases of karma, negative emotions, and suffering by following the prescriptions of an experienced doctor or spiritual or your higher power or whatever. By taking the medicine of the Dharma. Any final thoughts?
So when you recognize that someone else, like maybe someone, family member or someone close to you, suffers with greed, hate, or ignorance, or all three, do you recognize as an illness within them?
That's definitely one way you can look at it.
And then do you have a responsibility in any way to help them?
That would be up to you. Whatever feels right to you. You know, the disease of ignorance is very tricky, right? You know, so I've even seen it in myself. You know, they talk about wrapping yourself in a rainbow flag or something. You know, our youngest daughter is gay. But you know, people of our generation can say stuff that is like, well, I believe that gay people should have all the rights that we have, or something like that. It's just like you're still separate, you're still looking at it like it's different,
Yeah.
and that you get to choose I think guess what? I'm gonna open the door and let y'all in.
Yeah.
That's still part of the disease, right? That's still making somebody other than us. Let's let the others in now. It's time to let the others in. That's still the ignorance, the disease of ignorance, you know? So.
Yeah, and being on so as a woman, we've had conversations before, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but you don't get to chime in on that because you don't understand what it's like to be a woman. To be afraid every single time you have sex, you might get pregnant if that's not what you want. You don't understand what it's like to be a woman. So it's not that you don't get a say, but you don't get a say about me, like as a woman or women in general. And
you don't get the final say. It doesn't
make us separate, but it definitely doesn't give you the right to say anything about what we can or cannot do. It shouldn't.
But I'm a middle-aged white heterosexual man. Obviously, I know best.
And that's why we're trying to get all you middle-aged white heterosexual men in.
Right. Or to finally die off.
And one final thought on outrage and spirituality. So I practice African traditional religions, and in Buddhism specifically, I know there's a lot of negative connotations in Voodoo. Got a lot of prominence out of outrage, and that outrage led to Haiti being the first free colony, most successful slave revolt for a whole country. Because through that, they were obviously upset they were being enslaved, and so they used voodoo as a mechanism to rally the people and to call on the ancestors to help them in the power to overthrow the people there. So
Yeah, I read about that. That was pretty powerful.
So they use their wisdom tradition to build power.
they garner that outrage and call on the deities to help them overthrow the powers of these people.
Absolutely. There's some of that in Buddhism, where you visualize a deity like Medicine Buddha, and you're visualizing that you have all the qualities of this divine being, and whether, a Medicine Buddha actually exists outside of us just by, visualizing those energies being within yourself. It encourages you, it makes you happier, it makes you feel stronger, it makes you ready to go out and conquer the world, so. All right, let's go ahead and do the chanting. We're at the contemplations. And if you guys can practice kind of speaking up and joining together, I feel like when our voices join together, there's also strength there too.
We still are trying to find a cadence with this.
I don't think we ever will.
I know. I think that's probably.
And I don't know when to breathe, at what part. And then I have words on here that I still can't pronounce. Obscurations. I don't even know why. Anyway. Contemplation of the 10 perfecting qualities. May I be generous and helpful. May I be pure, virtuous, and well-disciplined. May I not be selfish. May I be strenuous, energetic, and persevering. May I be patient. May I be able to bear and forbear the wrongs of others. May I be honest and truthful. May I be firm and resolute. May I be kind, compassionate, and friendly. May I be humble, calm, quiet, unruffled, and serene. Unless I'm outraged, then I'm going to let you have it. The discourse on loving kindness. Just as a mother would protect her only child, even at her own life's risk, so let everyone cultivate a boundless heart towards all beings. Let our hearts of boundless love pervade the whole world, so that all beings without exception might be happy. Closing dedication of merit. If I have attained any merit by the result of this practice, may it be accredited to all beings everywhere. May they find the source of the suffering and extinguish it. May they find the source of happiness and increase it. May all beings dwell in ultimate unalloyed nibbana. We'll bow to the shrine 3 times. And we'll bow to each other, your Sangha brothers and sisters, with smiles of gratitude. Final bell. So glad you came today.
Thank you. Thank you. I am too. I'm gonna try and make it more. 'Cause I need it. I really need it. Yeah. Wish Yoshi could have joined me, but she's out in her own little world.
Always too busy for us.
Yeah. Yes, but I definitely will there be another one next weekend?
Every Saturday,
Perfect.
we're here. Did you go to Yosheli's backyard party?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I was gonna ask you about that.
Completely forgot to ask. I was doing so many errands, like cleaning my house.
You know the party that you miss is the greatest one ever.
Really?
Did you
Yeah.
go?
According to my friends, like we would go to some place and it was whatever. But the one that I didn't go to, oh dude, man, you was all wow, bro. You're like wow. And I'm like, was it really that good? Like,
It's like-
if I would have went, would it seemed that
No, it
cool?
would've. It